Hello, how are you? You're now on screen.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very
Yes, you're on
much.
the big screen now. Yes, big hand.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Courtney
Thank you very much.
Courtney was talking about people like you. Where do you still have your energy?
Yeah, of course, much more than ever.
So how are you to start with?
Well, of course, I'm in exile and away from my country, my paper, my family, my wife. But it's part of the business in Turkey. If you're a journalist in countries like Turkey, you must be ready for all those kind of sufferings.
But if you look back a couple of years, were you, I mean, did you see this coming? You being apart from your family?
Uh, yeah, I mean, after the last referendum in Turkey, I'm much more, optimistic about the future.
You are?
Yeah, because half of the country was still resisting him, Erdogan, and it's really important that to know that at least 24 million people voted against him, which is really very important. I mean, you must see how the no campaigners were under threat, and that's why it's really a big victory for the no campaigners in Turkey to see the half of the country is still in the opposing side.
But even more public workers and journalists have lost their jobs. People in thousands.
Yeah, I mean, this is the worst period of time in our history. I can easily say that, and especially for journalists, it's like a hell nowadays. And we have 150 journalists in jail, making the Turkey in the biggest prison for journalists in the world. So this is a horrible record, of course. But it's very dangerous to be a journalist nowadays in Turkey. But at the same time, it is crucial and to be a journalist in such crisis times. And I'm in a way proud of being a journalist in this time. Otherwise, I mean, in Sweden or Norway, it would be easier for you to be a journalist. But if you're under threat and you have to couple with the death threats, in fact, and we are risking our lives to give the information to our audience. And now it's much more meaningful for me to be a journalist in my country. That's why I'm optimistic. I'm at the same time very willing to do my job more than ever now.
Are you finding ways to publish yourself and your colleagues inside Turkey too?
Not that easy. Unfortunately, I can't write for my paper now. I mean, because that can risk my colleagues in jail because the government, unfortunately, keeping them as hostage in its hands. So everything I write in my paper can endanger their lives and my wife's life in Turkey. But on the other hand, I'm trying to reach my audience and my readers in many ways using internet, using Periscope, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, every channel. I'm trying to reach them from exile.
Courtney has a question for you.
Hi, good to see you.
Hi, Courtney.
I was
Nice
hope
to see you
I
here.
was hoping you might tell the audience here about some of the creative ways that journalists have been resisting in Turkey. The taking the editorship every day, the challenges they're facing, and the creative ways that the government has, for example, destroyed the archives of newspapers.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays we are really working on this. It's very hard to meet with the audience in the time of censorship and self-censorship. In fact, I mean, when you arrest a journalist, you may silence hundreds of them at the same time. It's so dangerous. So, unfortunately, there's a kind of cloud of fear over the country that we have to deal with. But nowadays, as I told you, we are working in different ways to bypass those kind of censorship. And yet last year I was in jail, and I found ways to write for international press, and I found ways to handle it to my lawyer, even it's not, it doesn't seem possible now. So if I could do that in the jail, of course I can do it from here to reach my audience. So it is really important that we shouldn't stop the communication and use every channel to meet with them. And they block internet sometimes. Then we use, other ways, like, publishing some material. And when they ban it, we'll use Periscope nowadays. It's so familiar in Turkey now, and people on the streets cannot see themselves in media in Turkey. But we have reporters there. I mean, not only reporters, but ordinary people just carrying their phones and showing us the demonstrations. So in today's world, it's not easy to stop the communication. But unfortunately, in the mainstream, it's very hard to reach the audience.
But you also said that you need to be careful not to jeopardize the situation for your colleagues who have been arrested, and also for your wife and son. I mean, that must affect your writing, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very hard decision. But I talked to my wife. She let me go.
Okay. So what do you see will happen? What happens next?
In Turkey?
Yeah,
It depends on...
And with you?
It depends. Yeah, with me, okay. With me, hopefully the good scenario is we'll be going back to our country after this struggle, So in the referendum, we saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm sure Erdogan saw the same end. It's coming towards him, and it's not the daylight, but a train is coming towards him. Because he lost the whole big cities, and he found half of the people in his country against him. So it won't be so easy for him in the coming months and years. But it depends on our struggle. It depends on your support. Really, it's so crucial. And now whole Europe saw that there's another Turkey within Turkey, and Turkey is not equal to Erdogan. So you must support those people and support their struggle against a kind of state terrorism. Now, what I can tell it.
And when you talk about support, how?
Yeah, many ways, really. In terms of press, for example, you can go to Turkey and join their cases, and every day we have a media case in Turkey, and you can join their trials, and your existence there would be very important for them. Or you can publish their stories. As journalists, and in your country's papers, you can get their stories. You can invite their families. You can write letters to them. But not only media. What about trade unions, parties? There are politicians. 10 politicians are in jail now, together with the third biggest party leaders. And what about your parliamentarians? Get in touch with them and trying to visit them in jail. And academics, we have hundreds of academics now fired from their universities. You can invite them or find opportunities in your universities. You have to get in touch with the civil society instead of, governmental level. It's not possible anymore. But in the civil society, we can, communicate with each other, and it would be really important. This solidarity would be really important for us.
Can, you seem incredibly optimistic, given that you've had one of the most massive crackdowns on the media in modern history. And, we know by looking at the world that usually the crackdown on journalism comes before the consolidation of power and the rise of authoritarianism. So what gives you hope, and do you think that without a free and independent press that there can be democracy?
Of course. Well, I can summarize our paper now. I mean, in our building, in the entrance, we have a security check. And when you pass the security check, you would find some pictures of the journalists. Those are the pictures of people who were killed in the last attacks in a couple of decades from our paper, our writers. And they were killed by the terrorist attacks, and 4 of them, you can find the pictures still there. So every morning we enter the room, the building, just bearing in mind that this can be our destiny. And it's so easy in Turkey to kill a journalist. And I had an attack last year, and I survived from this attack thanks to the braveness of my wife. And it's so easy to kill a journalist. And my attacker is free now, but my wife is not allowed to leave the country. They took her passport. So knowing that being still alive is a big advantage as a journalist, opposing journalist. So it's enough for me to be optimistic. So so we have to keep alive. We have to stay alive and to struggle more. And of course, we have to be careful. But being pessimistic doesn't help at all. So we have to be optimistic. And I believe in this tradition of democracy in this country. And I know that many of the people are supporting democracy and human rights in Turkey.
Hello, John. It's Walid Al-Sakaf. First of all, I'd like to say seninle gurur duyuyoruz.
Thank you very much.
In Turkish, I've been in Turkey for a while, and I'm saying we are proud of you in Turkish.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Basically, because I remember when I've seen your name, the word is John, and how you pronounce it in Turkey, and the word is actually soul, and it means soul, and it reflects really the soul of journalism. When you fight for facts and making sure that people get that information, and it's really a tag that we are all proud of. One question I had, since this is really a matter of predictions, we don't know what will happen after the referendum. I mean, what are your outlooks in terms of the laws that might change when it comes to direct effects on freedom of expression, particularly as we know there might be introduction of the capital punishment again, and whether journalists will be affected directly by this or not, or is that confined to particular severe cases? We've seen how states can formulate laws in ways that can implicate or involve journalists. I mean, is there a fear of that, and how can the international community support you in that? Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the death penalty issue, I don't think that Erdogan is capable of bringing it back. He is just bluffing, in my view, and trying to convince the Europeans that he has a very good, strong hand to do everything he wants, and he has alternatives in the region like Russia now. So this is the play he wants to play with the European world. But unfortunately, Europeans supported him from the beginning very much, and they have the responsibility of his rising. And now the Europe should decide. And this refugee deal with him helped him a lot in Turkey, and it was a dirty deal. And now he's blackmailing Europe by using this 3 million refugees, and he's blackmailing Europe that he could send them back to Europe. And this fear makes Europe very fearful of him. The only thing they could do is taking this advantage from him and isolate him in a way, but don't isolate Turkey. And Europe should see that there's another Turkey in Turkey, as I told you, and you have to get in touch with this other Turkey, and you have to be in solidarity with those people, and support them in every channel, in every way.
Hello, my name is Rune Ottosen. Besides of teaching journalism in Oslo, I'm also a member of Norwegian PEN board. And Norwegian PEN has campaigned for Turkish journalists for the last year. And Nina asked, what can we do? And I guess this goes to all of us. And we can start by putting pressure on our own governments. Turkey is a member of European Council. It's a member of NATO. These organizations are supposed to support democracy. Our leaders should support democracy by defending those who suffer for this semi-dictatorship in Turkey. So start with ourselves, ask our governments to do something.
Yes. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, very crucial point he made. In fact, the problem is here. Europe wants to punish Turkey in a way by isolating it. In fact, they want to punish Erdogan. But the problem is Erdogan is not a European guy. And any kind of isolation from Europe would help him instead of Turkey. And this is the dilemma we have at the moment. And you can push your governments, of course, to isolate Turkey, but you must isolate Erdogan from Turkey. And we are supporting the European ideals here, like press freedom, democracy, human rights, equality of men and women. And Erdogan is representing the other ways. So you don't have to isolate those people and those ideals. And you must find a way to support the people of Turkey who is opposing the dictatorship. And unfortunately, isolating Turkey from European family is not one of those methods and ways. So we have to find altogether ways to support the people of Turkey's democratic Turkey and get rid of this oppressive government. And I'm sure your conference will find different ways to, differentiate all those two.
We have quite a few of journalist students in the audience, and I would like you to address them and share with them what you think it takes to become a good journalist with the kind of endurance that you have.
Thank you very much. I just want to suggest something for them. It's very important nowadays. I'm thinking about supporting ways, in fact. And of course, I would very appreciate the efforts of Norwegian journalists and the other European journalists for supporting us. They are doing campaigns which are very impressive, very important. But unfortunately, the Turkish government doesn't care all those campaigns and the support. So we have to find ways to affect them, make an impact on them. So only possibility I can find out is that now we are working with some French colleagues on a project. The project is that we can follow up the stories which were censored in their countries and make them more visible in worldwide. For example, my story was about Turkish intelligence service trucks trafficking arms to Syria illegally. So I was stopped, I was censored, I was imprisoned, and now I couldn't, go beyond in this story. But if international journalists, let's say a couple of them, follow up those stories, this story, and see where those armory were heading to, or where were they coming from, that would be a message to the Turkish government that if you touch a journalist, you may find many of them following up those stories. And it would be a message to the journalists who made the story that he or she is not alone. So in this way, we can show our solidarity, international solidarity, and I can follow up a story about the corruption case of the Azerbaijan leaders, for example, or any other, where is the there's an oppression, there will be a lot of journalists supporting them and following up their stories. It's much more concrete way to do that and to make it international. So in a global world, if the censorship is so globalized, so we have to globalize the support for the free media, I guess.
You hear what he's saying? You know, we can isolate journalists, but not the story, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, we can try to make you be quiet, but we have to keep the story going.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
we have to work globally and across the borders.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Yes, please, Anam, come here. Because then he can see you. I have another.
Thank
Anam
you
from
very much.
India with a question
Sorry for the
you.
headache.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Annam Suresh. I'm a journalist and journalism educator from India. You just said it's even lucky for a journalist to be alive. I agree. It's easy for the government to try and stamp on a journalist's commitment. Those are his strengths. But they never ever, it only makes their commitment stronger when they try to step down on them. Harder than being a journalist is being married to a journalist, because that is the weakest point of a journalist who is committed. If they can't get at his strengths, then they will grab his weakness, and that's where they'll squeeze. So when you have organizations training journalists to work in difficult and dangerous situations, I think this needs to include, and I'm not joking, this needs to include the families of journalists, because very often to get the journalist to move off his scent is to get at his family. If they simply get at the journalist, he's willing to lay down his life. But if they get at his wife and children, then it makes the choice a lot more difficult. And a number of governments are doing this. If you can't get at the journalist, get at his wife, get at his mother, get at his children, and then see how much we can squeeze him where it hurts most. So perhaps that should be part of the work that journalists do in times of terrorism, getting their families to be as strong as them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, very important. So about the killing journalists, yeah, we are lucky. I mean, that we are in prison. In Russia, they just kill them. So in a way, comparing to our Russian colleagues, we can say that we are lucky. But about the families, you're right. I mean, this is the first time I've been working as a journalist for 35 years now. And I was a journalist during the military coup times in Turkey, and even the soldiers didn't touch the families, you know. So this is a new stage in censorship. And you're right. I mean, you can be brave for yourself, but if your family is under threat, so you must think twice about this, and that is really dangerous thing. But in a way, yeah, now it's time to be brave. You know, it's so 10 years ago when 20 years ago when I applied for a job, normally they ask me whether I am talented enough. But now we are asking the newcomers as they are brave enough. So before the talent, we need braveness in doing journalism really nowadays. And unfortunately, I said unfortunately, we are not only journalists now, we are at the same time activists defending our job, our right to tell the truth and people's right to know. And this is partly our job, new description of job, unfortunately, and which is important. And so we are not only describe ourselves as journalists, but at the same time we are the activists fighting for journalism in a way. So it was not our choice. We were forced to be like this.
Thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much for having.
Thank you very much.
This
I
way
thank you.
instead.
I'm so sorry for not being there.